Hello, and welcome to the NOTstalgia podcast.
A podcast where we discuss the retelling or continuation of pop culture favorites as seen through a queer and feminist lens.
My name is Eric Lefebvre.
And my name is Jessica Tercero.
And this week, we are once again on the pulse of cinema and pop culture, and we are going to plug in to The Matrix.
Oh my God, we're like so into this.
We're so into it. I know that when this comes out, it'll have been like a few weeks since it came out, but
it'll be almost a month. But like we recorded this episode way before that, like the week after.
Yeah, we recorded it the week it came out, so
oh my God.
Eat it up. I've been wanting to do this episode for so long because at the beginning of the pandemic, I did rewatch all of the Matrix movies after hearing another podcast discuss the first one ad nauseum to the point where I was like, wow, like I must have I need to go rewatch that. Like these ideas are incredible. Like, oh, and lo and behold, became re-obsessed with the first one. The 2 and the 3, not so much. Still a fun ride. But I've been wanting to talk about The Matrix with you. So I'm really excited.
I think I've mentioned this on the pod before, but when they announce a new remake, usually before the pod, my reaction was like, oh my God, really? Why? Or sometimes I was interested, but now, no matter what it is, I get fucking stoked because that means that we get to talk about this.
Yeah.
And I was very, very excited to watch this one. So for our viewing experience, we decided, because we had also during the past 2.5 years or whatever, the pandemic, we watched all 3 of the Matrixes and we watched the Animatrix too, which I had never seen.
Same. I also I watched the entire Animatrix as well. I'm so prepared. Oh my God, I'm so prepared.
So
I'm so excited.
So for this viewing, we're all, me, Danny, and Dave are all like, yes, okay, cool. We're going to watch all 3 and then we're going to conclude with the 4th one when it comes out, which here we are. So we watched Matrix 1 and 2 one day, and then the next day we watched 3 and 4. And I don't know if you did that too, but watching the original trilogy and then going to the 4th film was a bad idea. It was a very bad idea.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
No. Because of the, I feel like, and we'll get into it, I feel like the tonal shift would be so jarring from
it is.
The severity and the very seriousness of the end of Revolutions going into the beginning of Resurrections, where it's this sort of meta commentary on capitalism and idea ownership and being caught in the big air quotes rat race and creativity at large.
And let's be real, this first pass of a script, whereas the original trilogy was years and years in the making. The difference was very apparent. So it sounds like you didn't do what I did. So I'm excited to have these 2 different perspectives on that because, we were all here and okay. The first Matrix, masterpiece, wonderful. I'm so excited to be here and talk about it. The new Matrix was about 96 hours long.
It was.
And I'm excited to talk about that one because
same.
I have
You have opinions, and I still don't know how you feel about it. So I'm very excited to I don't want to know generally yet. I want to just dig into it and figure that out together.
Oh my God, should we dig in?
Let's do the first one. Thomas Anderson is stuck living a double life as both a computer programmer and black market hacker who goes by Neo. His world is suddenly upended when he is contacted by the incredibly badass woman named Trinity, who validates his theory on the existence of the Matrix as an alternate reality he is trapped in along with the majority of humanity. Soon after their meeting, Neo is captured and bugged by Agent Smith and his colleagues, who are actually sentient computer programs working to ensure the stability of the Matrix and purge anomalies that may compromise the program. Neo blacks out and wakes up again, believing it was all just a nightmare when, psych, Trinity and the gang show up to debug him so he can meet the one and only Morpheus, who gives Neo the choice between the blue pill or the red pill. Ignorance or enlightenment. What a tough call. JK, he obviously takes the red pill, or this would be a short, boring movie. After a traumatizing Sleepers Awaken scene, Neo comes to understand that thanks to a war forever ago, the machines are breeding humans to use as batteries, and the free humans are on the brink of extinction.
But OMG, how cute! Morpheus believes Neo is the one to bring balance to the Matrix and free humanity. No pressure. There's a fight scene between Morpheus and Neo. Trinity falls in love with Neo. Cypher is jealous of Neo. Talk about tension. Eventually, the group makes their way to the Oracle, an old, wise computer program that can actually see the future. She misleads Neo into thinking he's not the one, but oh no, drama! Cypher is actually working with the agents to take down Morpheus so he can go back to the Matrix and forget the world outside it. The agents show up and capture Morpheus, while Cypher starts unplugging his colleagues in the real world, killing them because if you die in the Matrix, you die in real life, obvi. Luckily, he's interrupted and doesn't finish off Trinity or Neo, who go to save Morpheus in one of the coolest fight scenes ever. Neo and Agent Smith have a showdown. Neo dies and then comes back to life. Neo then goes inside Agent Smith, killing him from the inside. Anyway, the remaining humans are safe, and Neo really is the one. Hooray!
Hooray! First and foremost, The Matrix, as a piece of cinema and cinematic history, still stands out as such a paramount piece of cinema to me.
Truly.
From a story to visual narrative to character to everything to like fight sequencing and choreo. No matter how many times I watch it in my adult life, I'm never not impressed. It's so careful. It's so intentional. Like, where do we even begin? The whole like the commentary on like systemic privilege and racism and the way of like disintegrating or pulling yourself from that, and like those who mean to do well but in fact are just gatekeepers to status quo, like enlightenment as an idea, and like,
and even visually,
what are we talking about?
Like visually, like it is just as stunning and intentional and thoughtful as the narrative, right? And every word and every sentence almost has this double meaning, and every scene, like, not only is it beautifully written and beautifully shot and just beautifully styled, but like even the violence is beautiful. Like the way that they, the wire work that they've done. And like, I mean, obviously there's like, the bullet time scenes, and there's, this film has so many iconic scenes that really like changed the entire course of cinema with how this was shot and how this was done. But like, truly, like, where do we start? Because it is on every level. It is just so good, so intentional. And ultimately, what it talks about is choice, right? What's real? What's premonition? What's fate? And like the commentary on humanity being scared about how they're exploiting machines, right? Like this is like taken to like level 9,000 of like humans being afraid of machinery and AI, and part of the reason why I love sci-fi so much, and we've talked about this a lot, is because of the commentary that you can have on current thoughts and fears and deep systemic issues. And this really is like one of the best sci-fi movies, because it not only, like, so many movies try to say like 3 things and they don't even say one well, and it's just awful. This movie says 50 things at the same time and does each one of them such justice.
Truly. I think I have a place that I do want to start, and it's the conversation that I noticed on this watch more so, arguably just the conversation of growth and enlightenment, base level. That idea and that theme as just like a running, meeting a new version of yourself and shedding this skin of your past self and becoming a better version of this person, arguably becoming a different person. I think that this movie has that, like, obviously through line with Neo, but also with all the characters as they develop and they speak with the Oracle and what have you. One thing I noticed this time, just as a conversation about that sort of like presentness and growth and like a recognition of now, I never noticed this before, but right when we meet Neo, he not right when, but he wakes up from his computer, gets a knock on the door. It's that group of like cool club hackers, pay him $2,000. He gives them the disc. He's like, "You didn't see me." They're like, "Yeah, we don't know who you are, blah, blah, blah." He makes a joke about mescaline, but the girl next to this character, her name's Du Jour, which is today, or like of the day, like of the present. Mm-hmm. And Du Jour is the one who persuades Neo to go because she's the one with the rabbit tattoo.
Right.
Which is, I think, an interesting commentary on like following the present and being focused on what currently is, not what was or what is coming, but like now, and that is the catalyst for this story. And then going into the conversation about like the one or like the enlightened self, I do think it's great because even in this, when the Oracle tells Neo, like, you aren't the one. And he's like, what the fuck? Well, they think I am. She's like, yeah, well, sorry, you're not. She's not wrong. And I know that later the commentary is like, well, she said what you needed to hear. But I think the conversation is more of like, that version of him is not it. Like, he will find that version, but it's just not there. And like the shedding of a past life and recognizing that like where I'm at now is not all I am or who I'm gonna be.
Well,
it's
and
like...
in that moment too, like, I mean, she doesn't outright say like you're not the one. Like she like lets him, she says, "What do you think?" And he's like, "Well," and she's like, "I'm sorry." And she just kind of like, I love how intentional she is in particular with her words, because she just goes off of what you believe and what you think. And she tells you what you need to hear and where you need to go. She knows how this ends, you know, like.
Exactly.
But if Neo knew he was the one, he might not have gone after Morpheus, or he might not have even become the one, because in order to become the one, he had to die, essentially, you know?
He had to shed a past life. And I do think that the recognition of meeting someone where they're at, but also giving them the space to grow, like recognizing like, oh yeah, you aren't ready yet. This isn't you, but you'll find it like in time. Be here, learn from here now. Eventually you'll get there, but don't worry about that, because what matters is right now. And in this moment, you're not that person.
It's really cool because like I feel like Neo really has 3 stages in this film, right? Where he's like the sleeper. He's just like, there's something out there, but he's like this normal dude who has a dick boss, which, you know, we can all relate.
Yeah.
And he like literally looking around his apartment, looking at his cubicle, like he has nothing there. There is no personality. There is nothing to distinguish Thomas Anderson from anybody else. He is nothing. Yeah. He is absolutely nobody. And then when he's taken, like when he like, you know, starts to follow the white rabbit and then takes the phone call and does the thing, we start to like see him change. And it's like, especially once he gets in the Matrix, he's just like, oh shit, okay. Like he wears like it's like his chrysalis phase, right, where he like wears the clothes and stuff, but he's not ready to like really actually do anything. And then once he, you know, dies and like sheds that and he's like this big beautiful digital butterfly, he's just like he's like, cool, here I am. And I didn't notice that, and I know we're like going in on like symbolism and stuff, but like, did you notice that the only time he ever puts on sunglasses is at the end of the movie? Yeah. Like where like everybody else like in the like, you know, all his buds are like, you know, sweet, like, oh my God, their outfits, these like amazing like leather out, like what a fucking moment iconic. This movie is. But, you know, in the leather suits with the sunglasses, and he's the only one that's just like like, wait, what? I don't understand.
And I love it because it's so clear. It's such a clear symbol of like perception of how you view the world. These people get it, and he's still learning. When he finally gets it, glasses on, I'm seeing the world now as a new person. Yeah. And it's so evident to like those little moments, because they didn't have to do that. The story would have worked fine without these little moments, but they work so well. And like even the titular like, goodbye, Mr. Anderson, he's supposed to be dead, gets up, my name is Neo, boom, boom, boom. Like obviously the resurrection allegory, the Jesus conversation, the Savior, Zion, that whole bullshit. I do think that it's more intentional than just a sort of pseudo-religious allegory, obviously, but like that moment of like shedding your old self, because it's like he did die and come back, but it's like it is the mourning of an old self and the embrace of existence of a new, better, more realized, more assured version, which arguably is a different person.
Which also goes into, you know, the trans story that is happening here. Like, so fucking perfectly, because, like, he starts off, again, Thomas Anderson, nobody, nothing. He's miserable. He fucking hates his life. He hates everything there. Nothing has any meaning. And the only thing that seems tangible Like, he only finds happiness and tangibility and anything when he becomes Neo. And, like, from the minute that Trinity meets him, she's like, hey, you're Neo. I see you. Like, you're Neo. Like, you're nobody else. And he starts going by that. The only person at that point that calls him Mr. Anderson is fucking Smith, is the bad guy, which is so cool and so intentional because all of the resistance is all people of color and women. And all of the agents, they're all bad guys. They are all cis-het white men.
In business suits.
In business suits. So intentional, trying to reinforce the rules of what this program is supposed to be, what you are supposed to be, what you are allowed to do and not do, who you are allowed to be, how you're allowed to dress. Like, just hell-bent on fucking control and then trying to fit him into this box, you know?
Yeah.
And so, like, seeing him forever be like, oh, no, I'm okay, I'm Neo, and, like, embrace that name. But when he, like, really embraces himself as the one, like, seeing that is just...
I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah.
It's so cool. And it's so cool, especially because this whole, like, again, all of the bad guys, the evil arc of this story, narrative arc, is all white supremacist, cis supremacist, capitalist supremacist systems and structures that are trying to keep anybody who isn't that in their little box and controlled, which is the whole conversation about the Matrix and breaking out of it and red pill, blue pill, all that. To see then this moment of like enlightenment, assuredness, and the birth of knowledge in this way, both as a trans allegory, as a way to smash, like, effortless. When you come into that space, when Neo comes into that space of, I am Neo, I am this person, this is who I was and am currently and will be, like, this is just it. The effortlessness and ease at which he takes down the entire system that was a stronghold against everything they were trying to do. It's like when he's fighting, he's just like, he's kind of like looking away, like, just like
whatever. And he's like, oh, I'm bored. Like, what is this?
I'm bored.
And you're like, yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
it's so cool.
Yes.
It's like, it's so lovely. And this movie is so intentional about that. Like, even the line when Morpheus is showing Neo for the first time the code of, like, they're walking down the street, everyone's in black and white, and he has that sort of dialogue about, a monologue about, like, this is what the world is. We see things like this. We're in this structure. Here's what things are. There's a moment when they're walking and Morpheus says, these people are still a part of that system, and that makes them our enemy. As he says this, the camera pans to a police officer who is, like, leaning on his car, and he, like, looks at the camera.
Mm-hmm.
It's like so good. I was just like, this is so good.
And, like, there's also, like, the lines at the very end that Neo says where he says, I know you're out there. I can feel you. You're afraid of us, afraid of change. I'm the future, and I'm going to tell you how it starts. Like, I'm going to show everybody a world without you and without borders and boundaries. And literally, the Wachowskis did that with this film.
And it's the message of self-empowerment, the message of autonomy, and the active conversation around dismantling these systems of privilege and of whiteness and of rigid heteronormative cisgender supremacy shit. Like, it is that active part of the conversation where it's like, when we've embraced ourselves and we have the confidence that you have, you're done. When we meet you where you're at, there's no contest.
You can't touch us.
You can't touch us. We are the future. This is the future. Things will change. Be ready. And you're just like, the fucking Matrix. I mean, granted, I do hate that a lot of this language has been co-opted just in terms of, like, get red pilled, bro, like that whole bullshit.
Yeah.
And also just like, I feel like I've also seen the line, like, oh, why do my eyes hurt? You've never used them before. Like, because in the movie, iconic and so beautiful and so cool and so, like, whoa, like, I feel like I'm on Joe Rogan, like, amazing. But I feel like that phrasing has, like, been co-opted by, say, somebody like Joe Rogan, who means quite the opposite of probably what, like,
who literally missed what this was.
And like a lot of people, yeah.
And okay, like, that's part of why I don't like the next one. I don't like 4 because it feels like it shits on everything that this is and this was in a way that I don't I think some of it was intentional, but I think some of it was not intentional. And we'll talk about the damseling of Trinity, which was really fucked, especially when you read these stories where they were trying to say like, oh, we empowered her. We wanted to make her like cooler and have more agency. And it's like, no, she was literally damseled.
Yes.
But I hate that people like you're talking about have taken this to mean something that it was never meant to, like taken it so far out of context and like at the same time shit on the creators. Just
it's just like it's the co-opting of like queer allegory and of like expanding your mind outside of the systems and the power structures that be. It's being co-opted by those who exist within and reaffirm those power structures as a way to say like, see, I'm smart and strong. And it's like, no, this movie's literally like the antithesis of you and everything you believe. Unfortunately, you did get it wrong, but because of the vague sort of way that it's structured here for the sake of a story, which I get, and it's not like it's nothing against the film, it's easy to kind of take that and reappropriate it just because of the vague language. And that's just the sake of art. That's just fucking what happens with art, and I understand that. But it still is such a good, strong, powerful, intentional story, and like, oh my God. Like I have nothing bad to say about this film. I do think far and above, I think all of the characters, I mean, well, here's my only thing. Actually, I do have something bad to say about this movie, which is just in general. Also, Lana, stop wearing dreads. What are you doing? Like, it's 2021. I like, that has nothing to do with the movie, but like, girl, get it together.
I saw a picture of her recently and I was like, oh, that has to be like 10 years ago. Absolutely. And I was like,
no, she still has dreads.
Love your pink hair. Absolutely love it. But please.
White girl with dreads. We're not like, come on. It's just what, and that's besides the point. But I guess it kind of informs this perspective on the idea of the cultural appropriative angles that this movie takes when it comes to Asian cultures. I still think is a little rough, just in terms of like, they're not doing anything necessarily damning or demeaning, but there is a level of like exoticism when it comes to like, well, the ultimate practice and the ultimate like violence or like fighting. It's like, I feel like there's still this level of like,
it's kung fu.
Yes. We don't know the ways of the mysterious. It's like, stop mystifying these cultures and also conglomerating, like lumping, like, I feel like it does it really subtly. It's not overt. It's not crazy rough. But I do think that this movie still does that in a way that's both reductive and harmful. Again, it's not crazy overt, but it is still in a movie that arguably has very little flaws. It was a glaring, like, are we like, I know it's 1999, but like, let's stop
there's
doing
like
that.
The whole dojo, right? Where like they, where he's learning how to fight and where he's learning kung fu and this and that. And so it would be really nice at some point to see other fighting styles just in cinema in general, like that aren't kung fu or taekwondo or karate or anything like that. Like
do capoeira.
Why don't we give these names rather than relying on like, ooh, like how fancy, he's a black belt, And
to me, that is the biggest issue, is like, it does stem from a white perspective of Asianness and of like the mysticism. Again, I use that in a very intentionally loaded way, of Asian cultures when it comes to, say, fighting or lineage or history, where we're not going to examine those things, but we're going to play with the idea that like, ooh, it's so mysterious and he's so powerful and it's so like, we don't like all of these things that lend itself to like the possible erasure of identities and cultures in a way that America loves to do. It's just like, again, why don't we talk about other things? Like, why is that the pinnacle? I do like the inclusion of that kind of stuff, but not in this way. This way is a very white and blanket, ignorant way. And it's like one of the only things that I had an issue with. And similarly, I do think that the next one has that same problem where I'm like, why are we not
learning?
They
all have that same problem.
They all do. They all do. Exactly.
I mean, like, but again, if you really want to like try to break out and do something unexpected, do a non-Asian fighting style.
Literally.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. But then arguably, I'm like, well, are we really surprised that a white woman with dreads is culturally appropriating in her film? Not really. But even then, that was my only big thing. And even then, it's not huge, but it's still an issue because it is still problematic. And I'm like, ugh, come on.
Speaking of problematic, so Tank, the ship's
let's
pilot,
talk about
right?
this.
So I've always really liked Tank. Like watching this movie, I was like, fucking, he's so cool. Like he just has like the cutest smile and is just so like here and like ready for them. And again, we watched like all of the sequels this week. So I was like, oh, why was he recast? Because it's like, it's such a weird moment where I forget the actor's name, but he plays his brother and like does an incredible job, right? Like he's a good fucking get for that role. But like, it's just like, oh, well, Dozer and Tank died, so I have to take their spot. And I'm like, wait, what? Like, but Tank lived. And so we looked up why Tank wasn't back. And it turns out that the actor ended up being a trash monster. Marcus Chong wanted to be in the second movie, right? They were like, cool. But they wanted to be on all of the posters with Trinity, Neo, and Morpheus, and it was going to be and Tank, right? So they wanted to they were trying to strong arm their way into main cast, right? Or leading cast, not supporting. And he was originally going to get $400,000 for the film, but he's like, no, you got to give me $1 million, and I want this top billing, and I want to be on the posters, and I want this, And at some point, the Wachowskis and the studio were like, absolutely not. No, thank you. We're just gonna recast. We're gonna figure this out. So he went and started he threatened the Wachowskis, he threatened to kill them, and a bunch of other really fucking gross stuff to where they ended up having to call the police on him. And I think there was also a lawsuit. He apparently during the filming of the original Matrix also pulled some unwanted pranks that were not great for anybody.
Love pranks.
We fucking love. And then since then, he has written books and he has done a documentary on how the Wachowskis fucked him over, and he's just got these big Trump supporter anti-vaxxer vibes going for him. And to this day, he still will not recognize the Wachowskis as females or as their names. He fucking dead names them. He's literally since this movie been trying to drag their names and trying to profit off of it.
What a mess.
He's a mess.
What a bizarre mess. I do like how in the next one they were just like, no, he died. And you're like, oh, for sure. God, what a fucking asshole. What a mess.
Yeah, truly.
I do want to bring up, going back to the trans allegory, one thing that I noticed more so in this one, this viewing than I had before. When Neo meets Trinity at the club, she walks up and she says, hey, I'm Trinity. He says, I just thought you were a guy.
Yeah.
And she says, most guys do. As a conversation about transness, what a fucking quote. What a text. Right?
Yeah.
Just the assumption of gender and the way that it's just that isn't me. I know that you assume these things based on how I present, but that's not who I am. And you're just it was such a glaring, perfect quote of yes, this is a trans story. This is a queer story. Let's talk about it. Oh,
truly. And let's talk about Trinity for a minute since we're already on her.
100%.
One of our first introductions to her, she is literally telling herself, get up, do this. She's trying, she's surrounded by people that want her dead, that want to hurt her, and she's just okay, you have to do this, you have no other option, just fucking do this. And I think as a introduction to have that right after seeing her kick so much fucking ass is so cool, because you see this happen effortlessly, but she takes this moment to be just okay, you can do this, okay, recenter yourself and go. Because I feel she really is kind of the heart of this movie, mostly because she also, represents love and that whole thing with Neo, where they play on her feminineness a bit too much for me in some parts, and it doesn't really seem we have that great fucking introduction with her, but she doesn't she does like kick ass like sometimes, but other times she's just like fucking quiet and doesn't like assert herself or say how she's feeling, but like kind of lets everybody else have their feelings. Like, so that kind of bothered me a little bit.
Well, it also just sucks that I feel like this is the case with any movie or any narrative that has a big romantic arc or like romance as like the pivotal key, like why we're invested. And with her, again, we see this like strong, empowered person. I mean, our first interaction with her before she even says any words, the gatekeepers of the status quo, the agents, Agent Smith, right? They're the strong ones. They're the ones who keep everything in check. They recognize, like the police are like, oh, our men are bringing her down. He's like, no, your men are already dead.
Oh, such
like,
a good line.
they're the ones who control the world, and they recognize that she is a severe threat. Mm-hmm. That's how we're introduced to her. Iconic, right? Like, how fucking sick is that? But the moment that like she falls in love, or that like her future having been sort of told by the Oracle that she's going to fall in love with the one, as soon as that starts coming into play within the narrative, she kind of does tone back on the strength for the sake of Neo. Like, she has to pull back in order for him to shine in a way that more often than not, when these narratives are told, the women do have to take a backseat, or the femme presenting characters do have to take a backseat and be smaller so that the reluctant, plucky, or what have you, male presenting masculine hero can shine and learn and become the big winner of the show.
And to me, it really felt like she was, she did take that backseat intentionally. Like, as soon as Neo was found, you know, if it was a fight, she was fucking in it, and she kicked so much ass, and she was so cool, and she did so great. But every other time, she was just kind of in the shadows observing, and she was observing because there was this conversation within herself was, is he the one? And like, which is like kind of a double entendre, right? Because it's like, is he the one that's going to save the Matrix, or is he the one, my one, right? Talking about soulmates and all of that, which like as women, like we are, you know, told like, oh, you can meet the one at any moment. And like, you know, when you least expect it, you're going to find them. And have you found your one? Like it's just so pushed forward. So while she's trying to figure that out, like she's just so kind of quiet and so kind of there and observing, and it's just, yeah, she really does take a back seat.
She does. I think
she literally is in the back seat with Morpheus, because Morpheus and Neo in their front seat, and she's in the fucking back seat.
I think the only time that I feel like she does step out of that box a little bit, once having receded a tad, is when Neo's like, I'm going to go back and save Morpheus. And she's like, I'm coming with you. He's like, no, you're not. She's like,
go to hell.
She's like, straight up, like, first of all, I'm the captain. Second of all, fuck you. And third of all, if you have a problem with that, you can go to hell. And he's like, okay.
Yeah, and that's the only time that she really asserts herself, even when even when Cypher is one by one killing everybody around her, because he's a gross incel boy who is like, oh, you're not going to be with me? Well, I don't even want to be here. I want to go back to the Matrix. Like, even then, she's just kind of like, no. Oh my God, don't. Oh my God, don't. No. And I'm just like, where the fuck is this woman that is like, that we saw at the very beginning? Where's the woman that walks, you know, that put fucking Neo in his place and went to go save Morpheus in literally one of the coolest fights in cinema history, where it is literally raining bullets. Like,
and even when they're on the roof, like Neo's about to die and she just puts the gun to that guy's head and she says, dodge this. You're like, oh my God, it's just so fucking cool. She's so fucking cool. She's so cool.
So why, she can only be that in the moment of battle. Like, why can't she have that same agency in her actual life? And again, that's a trope that, like, you know, so many women fall into in these kinds of things. Great fighter, kind of sucks at home, you know, like doesn't know how to function.
Well, it's also, I think it's such a shitty, like, binary too within that kind of a trope binaries, for a character,
for a movie that's supposed to be fucking breaking fucking boundaries and binaries.
It's just because a lot of that same trope where it's like, oh, she's such a good fighter, it leans into the masculine. So like when it comes to like being a big air quotes woman, like I don't know how to like be in love or dainty or cook or like all these things. Like, I mean, literally look at any movie that fucking what's her name, Sandra Bullock has been in. that character, right?
Miss
Where she's like,
Congeniality? Oh my
literally,
God, love.
any one of these movies, like, she is the sort of tough girl, and because she's a tough girl, she can't be soft, pretty girl. And what a dilemma. And like, I feel like this movie leans into it a little too much. And again, I get really bored with like these prototypical love stories, especially for a movie that is so outside of the typical and like a question everything, if you will, film, for it to be so like this man and this woman, and he's the one, and I know he's the one, and you're the one because I know it, and you need to get up, and you need to come kiss me, and you need to love me because I'm in love with you. And you're like, I mean, sure, but also like, which is one of my also issues with the next one, where we lean harder into love will save the day, which
But
sure,
we
but
also,
like, ugh.
at the same time, have to say binary like 85,000 times in that fucking
Yes.
movie.
So
for
I do
a
have a
movie
lot-
that's trying to like break, for this one, trying to subtly break binaries and boundaries and talk about choice and all of that, and like on a very subtextual, very smart level, and even 2 and 3, like, are they great? They're not the best, but like at least I think that they were fun and they were watchable, and they still had a lot of subtext, which is cool. There was a lot of really fucking cool fight scenes, which is great. The next one, literally, like, all of that subtext is just so fucking surface level that it's insulting.
I mean, I have a completely different take, and I'm really excited to talk about it.
We'll get into that.
Yeah, we'll get into that. I because I agree with you, but like differently. Yeah, okay.
Sure.
Anyways,
a lot of what we saw in this one is going to be cyclical with, like, you know, comparisons and stuff by its very nature, by its own storytelling. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
100%. Yeah.
let's just do it.
Okay. Cool.
Okay.
I'm down.
Neo is stuck living life as Thomas Anderson, the successful video game developer who developed a trilogy of games called The Matrix based on his memories as Neo in the previous Matrix. It's very meta. However, Neo believes that his memories are delusions thanks to years of gaslighting and mental conditioning by his therapist, also known as the Analyst. It appears Neo has resigned himself to a life of confused sadness, content to watch Tiffany, from afar, with a never-ending blue pill prescription. Then one day, Bugs and the gang from New Zion, Io, find and free Morpheus from a modal Neo built, who is really half Morpheus and half Agent Smith, who in turn helps them find and free Neo, whose appearance and code were altered in the Matrix so nobody would find him. Wow! Neo is in disbelief, but goes along with it anyway. Then there's a big battle, and it turns out Agent Smith is also there, but forgot who he was, and he's Neo's game company partner. They get Neo out, and during another terrifying Sleepers Awaken moment, Neo sees Trinity in the pod next to him, but is whisked away by good robot Sabebe before he can even process what the fuck is happening.
Neo is dying after being disconnected from the pod for the first time in 60 years, but has a fight with Morpheus in the fake Matrix and is all better. Once he's awake, he's introduced to the crew comprised of neo-nerds and a few animal-like synthients, the machine's preferred title when they turn away from the evil machine overlords. They swear that Neo's sacrifice changed everything, but it still seems like hella people are being exploited by machines, and the Sentinels are still kinda after humans, so did it though? They make it to Io, and old General Niobe grounds the ship and locks Neo up to preserve the peace Io has. JK, Neo and the crew leave a few minutes later to go back to the Matrix to free Trinity. They make it in and fight Agent Smith and the Frenchman's gang, then head to Trinity's motorcycle shop where new architect, the Analyst, confesses to rebuilding Neo and Trinity after the final battle in Matrix 3 to make a new stable version of the Matrix. Shit happens. They get out and go back to Io. Santi, little program girl from the first movie, comes up with a plan to save Trinity. They do it. Trinity can fly because her and Neo are both the one now, and they decide to rebuild the Matrix themselves into whatever they want it to be. Hooray? Okay, so first and foremost, I really enjoy this, and I'll tell you why. I think that as a piece of unwanted nostalgia, I think it is a really lovely camp. I think it's fucking camp. I think it's because like there are moments that feel intentionally bad. Like,
oh, I 100% agree with you. This feels like fan fiction. And if it is fan fiction, then I can take that because I like if this is Lana Wachowski's fan fiction of what happens with the Matrix after the fact, fucking cool.
But that's
zany,
why
wacky.
because I think that's what it was intended to be, because that whole narrative subplot, the meta bullshit about like making the Matrix 4 and like developing this game that is the Matrix 4 and that
because Warner Brothers was literally going to do that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they name drop Warner Brothers in the thing. Warner Brothers is making this game. Like they use that as a big sort of fuck you to the IP of the Matrix as a way to take back ownership of it in a way that like you didn't have the agency, where that's like the whole first 30 minutes of this movie.
And the first 30 minutes are wonderful. And I fucking loved the first 30 minutes of this movie. I was like, this is what I'm here for. I'm fucking here for this. I'm all in. Like the way that they hung on Neo and showed him as a broken man like was heartbreaking to see. And like seeing him and Trinity, oh, you're so close, you're right there, you know, like it was so cool and so interesting. I was like, what the fuck is happening? I am fucking into this. And then like to me it felt like after that 30 minutes everything was just like shitting on the whole IP. I
disagree, because to me I feel like that's like the setup to let us know that, like, what was the line where Bugs, when they're on the roof and they're like rewatching essentially the first Matrix play out in the modal where Morpheus is trapped by Neo, they say maybe this isn't the story we think it is after Trinity is captured, as a meta commentary on the first movie.
Absolutely.
Where like we're seeing this play out again, and I'm like, okay, that is such a bad line. It's such a bad line. But because it's so bad and it's so in your face, like maybe this isn't the story we think it is. Like,
and I was here for that. I was like, I see this and I'm here for this.
Same.
But for me, after watching the first three and just fucking subtext, also gorgeous fight choreography, also just like everything means something, everything is. And in this one, it was, to me, after that first 30 minutes, it was so boring. It was, even the fighting was so boring. It didn't feel like Matrix fighting to me. The slow-mo thing I thought was awful. But to me, the thing I think that really made this movie feel like camp is it didn't, like, both The Matrix and IO didn't feel like a fully fleshed out world. It didn't feel lived in, because when you're in the real world, the only people that we see there that are real people supposedly are like Neo and Trinity. Everybody else is fucking bots. Everybody else is a program, you know? And like they're like, oh, but everybody's trapped in here and Neo and Trinity have to be in there. And it's like, wait, but who the fuck, where are the actual people, right? And even when you go to IO, the only people you see Niobe, you see a couple of ship captains, and you see the botanist. But who the fuck else do you see? Like in the first movie, we're walking on the streets of New York and we see people living their lives, going around, you know, we have interactions with, you know, people that are like opening doors or doing this. In Zion, right, we see people just like walking around and you know, like getting ready for a battle or like dancing over here, or like it feels full, it feels lived in, and these feel lifeless.
I feel similarly, especially like even from the perspective of the way that it's shot. I think a lot of those like weird effects of like, ooh, I'm dizzy, gross, and really basic and boring. Also, I feel like it's so uncinematic. Like I feel like for some reason, like the first one, like amazing, but this one looks like there's almost moments where I feel like if it's a student film.
It didn't even have like the same look or feel or anything as the like this is a completely separate film from the trilogy. This has nothing to do with it.
And here's an unintentional thing that I think is wrong. Like I think some of the choices for it being so meta, whatever, I think it's camp. I think it's intentional. I think it's like an intentional degradation of this glorious thing for the sake of like recognizing that like Warner Brothers trying to replicate this for profit or reboot it for profit is gross and toxic, so they're going to tank it intentionally. Cool. However, I did read something about the way that Lana makes movies and designs movies in pre-production. Apparently before she transitioned, she would storyboard everything as a way to make sure that nothing was a surprise, as a way to like kind of coast and like in this way where like she isn't discovered. Like I know what's coming and I can control what's coming. Mm-hmm. So as sort of a transformative, performative allegory for like being trans and existing as this like lovely queer woman, she no longer storyboards, because why does she have to anymore? Apparently. Okay. That's wrong and bad. You need to fucking storyboard your film. Like, not to be a dick, but like, hey, maybe that's why it looks really
cinematography. Why, like, cinematically, like the colors, the shots, and the fight scenes. The fight scenes, I was like expecting at the very least like incredibly choreographed with like a bunch of wire work, and it just felt like any other action movie. It felt so boring, and there were so many times where it's like, okay, surely this is almost done, and it's like, no, I have 2 hours left in this movie. God fucking damn it, you know what I mean? Yeah,
and like literally. I just what a bad idea. I do think like good for her for like embracing this as an idea and like, wow, cool. Love that for you. However, that's why it looks bad. That's why it looks worse. And that's why it looks supremely uncinematic, because if you're kind of just like, well, let's just like vibe out in the space. Like, sure, I love the organic aspect of that, but absolutely the fuck not. Especially for an IP that is so drenched in intentional shot and intentional cinematography. Like,
and that's why I think that this is, to me, like this was insulting as a Matrix film, because to go from something that was so intentional, and like, look, if it was like, you know, Lord of the Rings and like the next one was like this caliber or anything, I'd be like fucking into that, because like Lord of the Rings is very binary. It was not like revolutionary or anything. It fucking is what it is. But the Matrix meaning so much to so many people, especially as a trans story or as an anti-capitalist story, or as like, you know, there's we've already talked about, there's like 50 million ways you can read that movie, and to each person, like what that is it's, you know, it gave so much meaning and so much validation, you know. But like to go from that to go to this, like it just felt like you didn't care about what that meant to me. You didn't like, I loved this and this meant so much to me, but you don't care.
But to me, I kind of like it as the opposite, in the way that, like, I would argue she cares even more so because, and this is where it gets tricky, she cares so much that she does not give a shit how it reads. Like, this is my story. I'm taking it back. You don't own what I created. You don't own this thing. So I'm going to do it my way. Fuck the fans. Which,
cool,
from
an
artistic perspective,
fucking
cute.
Cool.
But also, it does not read from a fan perspective. Because,
like, also, like, as I was going into this, like after the 30 minutes, I was just like, okay. And then I was like, okay. Like, and I realized that I started just, like, getting upset because because I had more questions and things weren't lining up and making sense with, like, okay, cool. Like, this is what the Matrix is and what you established. Okay, cool. And then, all right, I get that you're breaking some of the things from the original trilogy, but then, like, there were things that were broken or, like, weren't even well fleshed out in this movie that I was like, you're trying to establish this, but, like, literally, what are you saying? Like, Neo's like, what the fuck? Like, nothing changed. Why did I sacrifice myself? Why did Trinity have to die? Like, none of it mattered. And they're like, oh no, but it's okay because look at everything changed. And there's like 3 animalistic robots that are there. And they're like, see, everything has changed. And I'm like, okay, yeah. But they're still being hunted by the Sentinels, right? And there's still people fields, and there's like, okay, there's 4 robots on your side, and other than Morpheus, which you just got, and the one botanist dude, they're all animals. You have like, I mean, which are very cute, and I thought they were gorgeous, but like, this is not progress.
Yes.
This is not progress at all.
Yes. And so I also feel similarly, like after that first big chunk of time, a lot of that stuff was a little boring and taxing and tiresome. I do think all the Niobe stuff was like, why?
That honestly did not need to be there.
It didn't.
They both get grounded, and then like 2 minutes later, we're fucking out. We did not need to go to Io at all. If we would have cut that whole thing out, it would have been a much better movie.
I agree. And also, even like, again, some of the action sequences were like not well done. I think bringing back the Frenchman was like, kind of like, why?
That was fucking tiring.
Like,
and
why
and making
is
him
he
this
here?
big ass fucking boomer. Like, he was so bad.
Yeah, he was just big fucking.
Also, we made within this thing, we made a big fucking stink to say all of the old programs were fucking purged. All of them were gone. They're all gone. Why is Smith there? First of all, Smith doesn't like, oh, well, the duality. They try to like say that, but no, that's not it. And fuck you for doing that. And like trying to tie Morpheus and Smith in Morpheus because they both made Neo who he is. Fuck that. I hate that. But why did the Frenchman and his henchmen survive the purge? How does that make narrative sense?
It's true.
Why?
That didn't make sense. I don't know why they were back.
Why in this movie that is so fucking like choice is an illusion? Why was it so fucking important that Trinity got to make a choice if it's all fucking illusion and it doesn't fucking matter? Like, why are you telling us that none of this matters and there is no choice? What fucking choice is this? But like still making an emphasis on making the choice that isn't a choice. Like, to me, that was bad and that was lazy. When Neo gets out, so like in the first Matrix, Neo is what, like in his 20s or something, right? And they have to like spend like a week like physically like rebuilding his muscles because of the muscle atrophy, that because he's never fucking used his muscles, right? So this is 60 years later. He gets out of the pod and he could just fucking walk. Yeah. That's fucking cool. Why, for Smith specifically, when you decided to bring him back, because you told us this was an intentional choice, why did you change his appearance permanently? And why, when everybody else is kind of like talking like or acting or has these mannerisms of their former selves, why is he just a new person?
Well, that is because what's his name didn't want to come back.
I mean, sure, but like he could have like had at least some of the same vocal cadence or something, because I was like, this is not Smith.
The thing is, I think he tried, and I think Jonathan Groff just didn't pull it off.
He was not Smith.
Unfortunately, he wasn't. But I do like that the two big villains were both queer. Just as a perspective on the insidiousness of, again, like we've discussed, white cis queerness, or like white cis male queerness, in that way, where like I thought that was like cool. I don't like Neil Patrick Harris. I thought he did a good job in this, but a lot of these concerns, these questions that you have about this movie, I agree.
Also, there was this article that I saw where Lana was talking about how this movie was for like kind of for Trinity, like where she was, coming into her own and having her own agency or something like that. And I was just like, were we watching the same movie? Because literally Trinity is damseled in a way that she was never damseled in the first three movies, because she was literally stuck in the, like, he literally fucking left her, and then she has babies here, so she's, her maternal instinct, okay, but then she has to choose between her family and her, so it's still her, like, it's her, like, combating her feelings is her big bad, which is so wild. But then even her, like, her powers that she gets at the end, where she's like, oh my god, she can fly, oh my god, is she the one now? Oh, like, her abilities that she gets are not even specific to her, because this whole film, like, Neo is like, they're like joking like, oh, can you fly, can you do the thing, and he's like, nope, can't fly. And I was really uncomfortable with the amount of times we saw people jumping off of buildings, starting with Neo like 2 or 3 times, and then people are jumping out of the buildings as, like, bombs on Trinity and Neo. Like, that was really unsettling and uncomfortable to me. And then the last final thing was, them jumping off the building, and then, oh, oops, Trinity can fly. But again, that power is specific to Neo. Nobody else could do that before him. And so it's like, oh, look it, Trinity can do that now. That's cool. And then it's like, okay, well, maybe she's the one in this Matrix because there has to be an anomaly or something. But then literally the very next scene is like, oh, nope, they can both fly. They're both the one. So like she doesn't have anything unique to her.
And love saved them. Jess, but it was love.
Fucking
but love
boring.
saved them. Yes. That whole narrative, the whole damseling of Trinity. What kind of peeved me a little bit off the bat was like one of her first lines with Neo when they're like discussing, she's having a conversation with him about how like, I rewatched some of the clips and you based the character off you, right? She's like, I had a question about Trinity, this character Trinity. Like, I tried to show my husband, like, who do you think that looks like? And he laughed in my face and I laughed and it was a joke and I had to like just swallow that pride. When she says, I wish that I had like kicked his jaw off, I was kind of like, this seems out of place. Like this seems.
Why are you with him then, Trinity? Like,
well, not even that, but just like the vibe. Like, sure, like I like the conversation of like of being frustrated or feeling stuck or feeling complacent, like in relationships in life, what have you, in the same way that like they're stuck in this system. But that line just seemed so like I feel like it was trying to be like, yeah, because Trinity's a badass. But I'm like, hey, domestic violence actually isn't badass. Just as like a heads up. Truly, I don't think Trinity would have said that, even if she's in this. Like, she wants to literally break her husband's jaw off.
Yeah.
How about we talk to our partner about how like, hey, that's actually kind of fucked up. And like, I'm kind of upset. Like, maybe talk to him, Queen. Like, what's the deal? But I feel like it was used in this movie as like a way to be like, see, there's the real Trinity. She's coming back. We're about to see her in action and we're getting glimpses. And I'm like, that's not really a glimpse of her. That's like a glimpse of somebody who is in a bad way, but also kind of a bad person. Like, I don't think that you really know Trinity, I guess, then. Which, again, you could argue they don't based on how we see her depicted later in the film.
I mean, she's nothing in this movie because she's half of it, she's not even herself. And then the half that she is herself, she just is fighting and takes on Neo's role. So if anything, it's more erasure.
Yeah. The payoff is so bogus with the, like, my name's not Tiffany. And then finally when it's like, she's being pulled out of the coffee shop, she's made her choice to stay in the Matrix, and then her husband says like something about Tiffany again, and she pulls away. She's like, my name's Trinity, as a way to like call back like, oh, she's awakened, like it's the new self. But I'm like, this, we've spent like 2 seconds with Trinity, and also this isn't even Trinity. Like, also, why are we still at this fucking coffee shop? Like, this coffee shop should have ended. Like, why are we back here, and why is the final sequence happening here at this coffee shop? What? Why? What's the point of that? The people jumping from buildings, that was scary as fuck. It was really unsettling, and I agree with you. I think the constant reiteration of like death by suicide from jumping from buildings, like in this space, Neo like attempts essentially, or he's told that that's the case, and then these people actually doing it, and then him doing it before he's pulled back by bugs, like. It happens
and then
a
at
lot.
The end doing
and
it.
Then at
like
the end, they jump together.
The apex when they are going to Thelma and Louise. Just kidding.
Because again, what does that mean? Like, if we're saying like, oh, after enough times, maybe you will fly. Like, I get that there's the argument of like leap of faith and believing in yourself to a point where like when you do take that leap, know that you'll like know when you're ready, and when that moment happens, like you will be capable in the same way that we've talked about Neo in the first one. But I do think that the visualization of that leap of faith, that literal leap being off of a tall building, is not the look.
Yeah.
I don't think it's the look. I don't think it's. It's just. It just
felt
seems
really, really bad and really off. It felt gross.
Yeah, I personally still think that this movie is a. Okay, how am I going to say this? I think it's a good piece of the IP in the context only of I'm taking it back, I'm owning it, this is my story, fuck you and fuck everybody else. Because to me, I'm also like, sure. Like, I 100% support her decision to do that, because again, The movie was going to happen regardless, whether or not the Wachowskis were a part of it or not. Lana's the only one who said yes. She's back. She's doing it. Not because she wants to. The story was supposed to end. The story was never supposed to continue. Like, the story was done. Like, this was not going to happen explicitly, clearly. They're going to make it happen because they own the IP. So, as a piece of sort of prologue script to the Matrix IP, I love that she kind of said, fuck you and whatever. Like, you want a love story? Fuck it. You want this? Sure. The first 45 minutes is going to be this big meta conversation with literal text from people who kept telling her what her movie was when she's like, I made it. It was
so fucking good. That was iconic. So fucking smart.
Cool. And then later, like, where it's just like, okay, we have this big conversation about like, fuck you, Warner Brothers, and fuck this whole thing. And then the rest of it is just kind of a boring romance piece that is so intentionally like, I mean, intentionally is not necessarily the right word because I don't know if it was, because it's not clear again, because it does seem very haphazard. However, the fact that it is kind of just this very expected, very simple love story between one character and another, and look, we're in love and we're flying away. I am kind of obsessed with that because it feels like an intentional tanking of the IP.
And here's the thing. I absolutely stand by that. I would probably have done something similar because now this ensures that there's never going to be another Matrix, right? Like, in all of that. But
and for that reason, I'm like, it can't.
Literally, like, I can respect that, but that doesn't mean this is a good movie, and that doesn't mean that I like it.
It's true.
So, like, those two things are 100% separate, and, like, on a super meta level, I see you, and I understand what you did and why you did this. As a viewer, this is just not a good movie. And see, for me, we like agree at the exact same level, but I'm the opposite reaction of it, where I'm like, is it a bad movie? Yes. Do I like it? A lot. I liked it a lot. I think it's like because of also what it means for like the zeitgeist and sort of like our present day experience and our reality. Like, in the same way that the original Matrix is this conversation about like reality, what is, what isn't, and the way that this is kind of a stink piece on not only the IP, but on the zeitgeist and the things that the Matrix are, I think that's amazing. Like, just the sheer, it's like performance art to me, right? Yeah, I'm with you.
That 100% just like, it just feeds into my enjoyment. Because like, apart from all of the problems with it, I do think there's obviously a lot of problems. I do think that there's a lot of messiness and it's kind of bad. But even watching it, I still enjoyed it pretty thoroughly from start to finish. And I think recognizing this as an artistic choice to kind of tank it just feeds into my enjoyment of it more, where I'm like, oh yeah, like, especially for a movie that is a commentary on the system, on culture, on all of these things, for them to make that movie be this bigger statement about creative integrity and ownership and blah, like, oh, that's where I live with it. Because again,
sure, absolutely,
everything you've said, I agree with you. But yeah,
I feel like if the damseling of Trinity wasn't so awful, if the worlds felt more lived in, it would have been more palatable to me. I did watch this twice. I watched it once without taking notes. I watched it the second time and took notes, and it did take me 84 hours to get through it because it is an 84-hour movie that second time. But like, this movie is it is trying so hard to hit you upside the head with like, fuck binaries and choice is illusion and all of this, when literally it is just reinforcing you need to make a choice, or it is like reinforcing those binaries and like just like hitting you over the head with like this these like, hey look, this is a big idea here. And it just got so hard. And like, literally the regressiveness of, again, Trinity's character and of Morpheus, like, where Neo is dying because he's not hooked up to this machine that he's been hooked up to for the past 60 years, right? Rightfully so. His body is just like, no, fuck this. Like, this is not my normal environment. I'm not here for this. And the only way that they can think of to bring him back is to make him fight, like to incite physical violence, because that is what is going to get him going again. Because at his core, Neo is is violence, or he is going to fight for love, because it's like, oh, but Trinity, you have to do the thing. And to me, that was just bad, and that was a bad choice, and that was boring. And so, like, literally, in order to save his life, you have to beat the shit out of him. Like, how fucking regressive is that?
And it made me, when that part happened, I literally in my head, I was like, where's Christina Aguilera's Fighter? They need to cue it. Like, I was just like, yeah, put it back there. It'll work. Because this movie's ridiculous. So, like, put it there. Like, it's going to be fun. It's going to be so fun. My biggest, like, actual issue with this movie, why the fuck was Christina Ricci there for 3 sentences?
Oh my God. She looked so good. I was ready for her to be in so much more of it. And then she is literally there for...
She's there for 2 seconds.
Yeah, for like... Yeah,
she says 3 sentences, and then we never see her again. That wig, that look, that character, bring her back. Give her power. Make her the one.
Incredible.
Why are we not doing this? Like...
Why wasn't she, like, you know, buddies with the analyst? Why weren't they teamed up? Like, can you imagine how iconic? How incredible.
I mean, yeah. That I actually did have a problem with. Like, what the fuck? I was so ready for Christina Ricci to be in this, like, significantly, and she wasn't, and it made me really upset.
I also, one of the things that did kind of bother me was that, like, and it makes sense narratively, but I think it was just like a bad choice and we could have done something better. The analyst is literally a therapist, so the therapist is the bad guy who is like trying to help Neo through his trauma, and then gives him pills, which are blue pills. Oh my God, he's taking blue pills like every day. Therapists and mental health medication is bad. Like, that is evil, and that's like, that left a really bad taste in my mouth.
Oh no, that is inexcusably bad, because again, too, it does reinstill that conversation of like, oh well, he's just manipulating Neo, and like, I don't need somebody to twist my words around.
Therapy is bad. This is how therapy works, you know?
Yes.
Yeah, I hated it.
Ugh, it's toxic. Yeah, I also hated that too. I mean, I liked how insidious he was, but
no, he, like, the villain as, like, yeah, I think Neil Patrick Harris did a great job in this, but I just think that was a really bad choice.
It
especially coupled with like the jumping off of buildings and things, like, so see, these are the kinds of things where, like, I get what you're saying about like this movie, like, oh God, incredible as an art piece, cool, but these are the things that really pull me back and are like, no, I can't get behind this movie because of all of these ways that, like, it is just incredibly regressive.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like, even if you are spending time gonna tank this thing,
do it responsibly.
I mean, you do have a platform, and so equating these two things with badness feels big conspiracy vibes and big, like, I don't know. It's just, it does not read, it does not play. I also had a big issue with that.
Then at the end, like, Neo and Trinity aren't going to pull people out of the Matrix. They're just going to remake the Matrix. And to me, that also felt like a really fucking weird choice, where it's like, you're still using their tools. You can't dismantle their systems by changing the rules, like, within the system. You have to destroy the system in order to achieve true freedom and choice and all of that. Yeah. So all you're doing is just, now you're the problem. I'm sorry, I'm trying to think of like the word, but I'm
no. Especially for a movie that is trying to echo as like a way, like the same ending from the first one, where it's like, we have something to say and we're going to fly off into the distance in the same way, right? Like, that's the classic Matrix ending. In the first one, it's very clear. We're here to fuck your shit up. We're going to dismantle everything that it is that keeps us down, and we will win. End of movie. This one, it is, we will rebuild the system that keeps everybody held down, and we will do it in a cute way.
With rainbows.
End of movie.
It's like,
it's big.
Why not just fucking unplug that shit right then? If you unplug everybody, if everybody is fucking safe, guess what? All the machines are gone. You don't fucking need them anymore. Like, you would solve so many problems and literally your entire goal by just destroying the Matrix.
Yeah, it's big neoliberal vibes. We're gonna build it our way. Yeah, literally. Yes. Oh my God, that's iconic. Yeah, we're just gonna do it our way. It's toxic. No matter which way you slice it, it's bad. I agree with the Wachowskis. I don't think that we should have continued.
Absolutely.
Unfortunately, for the sake of capitalism, it did.
Or if we are going to continue, let somebody else pick up this mantle. Like maybe because, I mean, you told your story. You told the story that you wanted to, that meant something to you. Knowing what this movie and what this story like had meant to so many people, let somebody else take up that mantle. Because you know what? Sometimes... Like, I mean, we've proved it here on the pod, right? When somebody takes that and runs with it and, like, you know, lets it evolve and, like, really owns it, like, it can be absolutely incredible. So it's not always bad when somebody, like, is like, hey, look, I love your idea. I want to do this. I mean, Blade Runner 2049 was fucking cool, right? Like, you can let other people, like, at a certain point as an artist, like, when you put your art out into the world, that's it. That is like, you know, and you can't control how people are going to perceive it or what they're going to get out of it or anything, right?
Yeah.
And at a certain point, I do think that it is cool for people to cover your song in a new way that has absolutely no structure like yours did or isn't even the same genre, you know? I think that this might have been a better movie had they just been like, cool. Yeah. Like if somebody else has a story to tell in this universe, let that happen. But like when we're too precious with our ideas, I feel like we miss out on something that could be really great.
Agreed. Yeah, I do think this could have benefited from somebody else telling the story. I mean, preferably somebody, a non-white person with white dreads.
Absolutely. Yeah.
We're back.
We made it.
We're
here. We're out of the Matrix. We're unplugged.
In the real world. We're free people.
Eric.
Yes.
The original 1999 Matrix. What a year. Who was it for?
It was for the trans community and for queer people at large. 100%. Like, it is such a good film. That's exactly who it was for. Who did you think it was for?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I can't. I mean, like, especially with all the context that we have in like today, it's just like, that's absolutely who it was for.
Yeah.
It was also like really for Keanu Reeves' career and for the Wachowskis too. I mean, like, this was their first film, right?
No, it was not. Wait,
this is the first film that I know of them from.
So, Assassins and Bound.
Okay.
Before The Matrix, so 95, 96, and then The Matrix.
Okay, so for one of their first 5 films, see, I'm talking out of my ass. I'm so glad that we went and looked this up. For one of their first films to be The Matrix, how fucking cool is that?
It is very exciting and cool.
Did you like it?
Oh, I think I love it. I think it's a piece of history. It's a piece of cinematic gold. I think the story is great, near perfect. I could watch this so many times. I think it's just an iconic and incredible movie. I think it's great. Did you like it?
Oh, absolutely. This is a big 5-star for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love it so much for all the reasons that we talked about, and also because like, really, what a perfect time for this to come out too, where it is like 1999, it is Y2K, you know, is upon us. Such a moment in fashion. Like, it perfectly encapsulates that time period and immortalizes it and makes it like timeless in a way that I don't think any other film in this era has. Any other film that is so like tech heavy, I'll say, like,
oh yeah, without a doubt.
So it's just such a good movie, and like you said, near perfect. What a treat.
What a treat.
Now, the 2021 Matrix Revolution.
Resurrections.
Resurrections. Oh my god. Anyways, was this new, interesting, or the same, or progressive, regressive? How we feeling?
I think that it was both new and interesting in the way that it reclaimed an IP and sort of ran it into the ground in both a meta and destructive way. I thought it was incredibly regressive just in general, from the themes to the sort of faux feminist sort of autonomy of Trinity to... I mean, there was like we said, there was a lot going on with it that was a little messy. I don't think that the story has evolved with today's ideals in like a positive way, or like kind of at all, apart from the conversation with nostalgia, which we didn't really get into that much apart from like the meta thing, but like the cure for anxiety is a little bit of nostalgia. Like that was a line in there. There was the whole point of it being rebooted is because people love nostalgia. They want nostalgic things. Like even one of the head creators of it was like, you made me flunk for 7th grade because I was obsessed with your game, blah, blah, blah. And I love a nostalgic whatever. This means so much to me.
And that was actually a bot.
And it was a bot. Yeah, exactly. And so I think that that's the only way that it's really like captured a current trend in today's ideals. Just the nostalgia wave of reboots and this constant need for reimagined IP that may have like salved or soothed loneliness in childhood for people. But apart from that, yeah, I think it's very regressive, but I also think it's both new and interesting. What do you think?
I think it's definitely new.
Okay, drag.
I just spent like 50 minutes dragging this movie, but parts of it were interesting, like had some cool, interesting ideas that didn't really pan out. Yeah, that's it. Like, I think that it was, I think that it was really regressive, which is really disappointing, like, for how progressive the original is. I think you're right. It didn't really evolve with today's ideals at all. It was just kind of a movie that was stuck in nostalgia and also like nostalgic ideals. Like therapy is bad and this is what feminism looks like. And this is what female autonomy look like. And this movie didn't feel good, and it didn't feel like it was saying anything good, or for a movie that was just obsessed with saying binary 84,000 times, and trying to get you to think outside of the binary. This felt like a very fucking binary movie.
Yeah.
So who do you think it was for? We know who this is for.
Oh, for me, like I had said before, this is for Yahya Abdul-Mateen II's career. I think that this is 100% for him. This is for everything he's worked for, from Candyman to this. I mean, granted, I know that there's a lineage of history, like his filmography, I'm sure, is fairly impressive. But just standalone Candyman to this, I'm like, I cannot wait to see him in something else. He's fantastic.
Yeah.
Who do you think this was for?
I think it was for Lana. I think she was
That's true.
Fuck this. She was like, fuck you trying to make my movie without me. Fuck you threatening to make my movie without me. Like, this is mine. If somebody's going to tank it, it's going to be me. And she did it. And I applaud her for ruining it on her own terms.
She really did.
I am mad that I sat through it because I absolutely didn't want to, but I am happy that I didn't have to go to the theater to pay for it.
That's true.
Did you like it?
I still really liked it. I'm going to stand by that. I stand by liking this movie. Despite everything we've discussed, I still stand by it as a creative piece of performative art alongside a really interesting meta commentary on IP theft, or like what have you, like the idea of capitalism and like reiterative nostalgic reboot cash grabs. Cool. So I like it. Yeah. What do you think? Do you like it?
Hell no. I hated this. I was so mad that I had to watch this a second time.
Yeah.
I don't think I will ever go back and watch this movie again. I love that you were able to find joy in this movie, but there is absolutely no fucking way that I was ever going to be able to find joy.
Yeah.
And I'm happy for Lana being able to do this, but I still think that some choices that were made, some irresponsible choices.
Agreed. Without a doubt.
And yeah, absolutely cannot like this movie. Nope. I'm still mad.
Mess.
I'm so glad we finally got to talk about this, though. Because,
me too.
Am I glad that I watched it a couple days ago? So I'm not as fired up, probably. But I mean,
I feel like too, there's still so much we could talk about with just The Matrix as a whole. Like, I definitely wanted to get into like the animatrix and some of that like interstitial lore of storytelling and like, because I do think that there was some really like lovely stuff in there. And oh my God, you know what? We're not going to get fully into it, but I'm just going to call on this. One of the animatrix segments or one of the shorts dealt with suicidal ideation and the act of dying by suicide, right? Mm-hmm. And that, I feel like that, if we're looking at that clearly, I feel like the conversation about like dying to get out of the matrix is like, let's not do that. But I feel like that held much more grace for that conversation than this movie did. Mm-hmm. Right. But that's beside the point. Anyways, the animatrix is sick, and I wish we could have like really dug into that, because again, there was the whole factory episode too, and like there's just so much. There's so much about it that's like cool, and I feel like the Matrix offers so much for so many different types of artists and storytellers that even if we're not looking at the main cinematic narrative pieces and we go into some like the video games or the animatrix or like what have you, I feel like it's a really fun place to play with the idea of like simulacra or whatever. Anyways, cool.
Absolutely. And that's, like those stories were not by the Wachowskis.
Exactly.
Right. And so that's what I mean when I say that other people have stories to tell within this space that you've created, within this safe space that you've created to, explore these kind of ideals, So I do think it's a shame that somebody else didn't get to tell a story and instead Lana just tanked it.
I feel similarly. Yeah.
Anyways, we did it. We made it.
We finally did it. We had the conversation.
Thank you so much for listening, everyone. Let us know what you thought of The Matrix Resurrections. Yeah, I got the right one.
Yes.
Let us know what you thought, because clearly we're of two different minds here. And whose side are you on?
Whose side are you on?
Whose side?
Yeah, and which one of us is the red pill? You decide.
Ooh,
sound off in the comments.
Ooh.
Don't forget to rate and review us wherever you get your podcast. And now on Spotify, you can do the star thing on the show page. So give us 5 stars because you love us. And also to the person who gave us a 2-star review and did not leave a comment, we see you and we will find you. So consider that.
That is the only 2-star review. And I feel like 2 stars is a little bit more insulting than like, just the 1 star. Because it's like,
come on, Lana, tank us.
I mean,
no.
Like, wow.
Yeah, it's like...
And to not leave a review? Oh my goodness.
We'll fucking find you.
But like everyone else is 5 stars, so we love you all so much. But
thank you so much. And like have your opinions on us 100%, but to us, I'm like, if you're going to drop our fucking rating, you can at least tell us why. And if you're the person who commented on our YouTube about why we were wrong about Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, I don't care what you think. Secondly... Everyone should follow us on social media because we have some great pages.
That comment on Charlie and the Chocolate Factory was
so funny. It's so iconic.
Incredible.
I know, and if he's listening to this, or rather, if they're listening to this, whoever this person is, we read it and we think about it pretty often. I think about it often because I think it's so funny.
Thank you for taking the time to listen to our episode and also to have write
truly.
To write a really meaningful response. We actually really like feedback even when you don't agree with us. So
literally,
it's really cool.
We affected you so much that you wanted to come and like talk to us. Like, I mean, that's the whole point of the conversation. Like, we're having conversations about these things. So if you disagree, gorgeous. If you agree, also gorgeous. It's irrelevant because the point of it is to have a conversation about it. So we love it.
You can reach out to us on social media or at our email at notstalgiapod@gmail.com. Our artwork and music is by Eric Lefebvre, editing by Danny Barkley. And thank you again for listening. And thank you, Eric.
Thank you, Jess.
And remember, stay cute.
And stay critical.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye. 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 This podcast has been brought to you by the NOTstalgia Network.
Visit thenotStalgiaNetwork.com for more.
You enter the dungeon and see the evil wizard pointing his wand directly at you. He says, "Show me a funny and delightful actual play Dungeons & Dragons podcast, or I'll consume your souls!" What do?
I take out my phone and find Quest Friends Forever on Spotify.
I show him how to find Quest Friends Forever on Apple Podcasts.
I share the Quest Friends Forever Instagram and YouTube pages with him.
And you all get critical hits!
Yay!
Quest Friends Forever is an actual play podcast starring 4 friends with varying levels of Dungeons & Dragons experience. Join us for new episodes every other Wednesday as we embark on fantasy adventures, play fast and loose with the rules, and laugh at each other's shenanigans. No prior D&D knowledge is required to listen, so everyone can feel free to join the fun. Quest Friends 4, that's the number 4, like how there's 4 of us, ever. Find us on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. That's Quest Friends Forever.